Sienna Hayes had learned to love the quiet, not the kind that felt empty, but the kind that felt intentional. Her wine bar, Crimson and Oak, sat tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, on a street that tourists rarely found. The locals knew it, though. They came for the carefully selected wines, the artisan cheese boards, and the atmosphere that felt like stepping into someone's living room, warm, unhurried, intimate. She hadn't always been this way. 3 years ago, Sienna was louder, bolder, the kind of person who said yes to every invitation and kept her calendar full. But life had a way of teaching hard lessons. Her father's sudden death, followed by her mother's retreat into grief, then her fiancé admitting he'd been seeing someone else for months. 3 hits in 1 year. After that, Sienna stopped filling her life with noise. She learned to sit with herself, to build something that felt solid and true. The bar reflected that. Exposed brick walls, soft Edison bulbs, velvet chairs, the color of burgundy. Jazz playing low enough that you could still hear conversations. She ran it alone most days, pouring wine with steady hands and offering recommendations without pushing. People felt safe here. She'd built that on purpose. The man who noticed details, Julian Cross, walked in on a Thursday afternoon when the fog was rolling in from the bay. Sienna noticed him immediately, not because he was trying to be noticed, but because of how he moved. Deliberate. Present. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley sleeves pushed to his elbows. His hair was slightly too long, curling at the edges. He had the kind of face that suggested he smiled often, but didn't waste it on things that didn't matter. He approached the bar and looked at the chalkboard. Menu for a moment before meeting her eyes. What would you recommend if I wanted something that tastes like autumn? Most people asked for something sweet or whatever's popular. Sienna tilted her head. Are we talking early autumn or late? Crisp mornings or rainy evenings? His eyebrows lifted slightly, impressed. Rainy evenings. She reached for a bottle she kept on the second shelf. Pinot Noir from Oregon. Earthy, soft tannins, notes of mushroom and wet leaves. It sounds strange, but it works. You watched her pour. Watched the way she held the glass at an angle. The precise measure she used. You're very deliberate about this. Wine deserves respect, she said, sliding the glass toward him. And so do the people drinking it. He took a sip, let it sit on his tongue, then nodded. That's exactly what I wanted. Building something real. Julian became a regular. Not every day, but twice a week, sometimes 3. He never announced himself, never acted like his presence was a gift. He'd come in, order something based on her recommendations, and sit at the bar reading or working on his laptop. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they didn't. Sienna found herself looking forward to the days his name appeared on her phone. One evening, when the bar was empty except for them, he closed his laptop and looked at her. Can I ask you something personal? She was wiping down glasses. Depends on the question. Why do you run this place alone? You could hire someone, take a day off once in a while. Sienna set the glass down carefully. I like knowing that everything here reflects what I intended. You let other people in. Things shift. Not always badly, but they shift. That sounds like someone who's been let down. She met his eyes. It sounds like someone who learned what matters. Julian nodded slowly. I get that. I built my company the same way. Started in my garage, didn't take investor money until I knew exactly what I was building. People thought I was being stubborn, but I just didn't want anyone telling me what my vision should be. Your company? Sienna asked, realizing she'd never asked what he did. Tech. Software for sustainable architecture. Not glamorous, but it matters to me. Said it simply. No bragging, no inflation. She studied him. You don't talk about yourself much? I'm more interested in listening. He leaned forward slightly. You have this way of moving through the world like you've already figured out what's noise and what's real. That's rare. Sienna felt something flutter in her chest, small and warm. Maybe I just got tired of pretending to enjoy things I didn't. Or maybe you decided to stop letting other people define what your life should look like. The way he said it, steady and certain, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Not examined, not judged. Just seeing the shift 2 months in, Julian started texting her outside of his visits. Nothing heavy. A photo of a sunset from his office with the caption reminds me of that Malbec you suggested. A question about whether she'd tried a new cheese shop downtown. Small threads that kept them connected. One Saturday, she texted him, "Got a rare bottle in? Interested?" His response came quickly. "Always. But only if you'll share it with me." That evening after closing, Sienna opened the bottle, a Chateauneuf du Pape she'd been saving. Julian arrived 20 minutes later, his hair damp from the rain, carrying a bag from the Italian bakery down the street. "Focaccia," he said. "Figured we'd need something to balance the wine." They sat at the bar, the lights dimmed, rain tapping against the windows. The wine was incredible, layered and complex, but Sienna found herself more focused on the conversation. They talked about everything: childhoods, failures, the moments that shaped them. Julian told her about losing his best friend to cancer. At 25, how it made him realize life was too short to build things that didn't matter. Sienna told him about the year she lost everyone, how it taught her that peace wasn't weakness, it was strength. "You're different than most people," Julian said, his voice low. "Different how? You don't perform. You just are." She looked at him, really looked. His eyes were steady, his posture open. There was no game here, no angle, just honesty. "I'm tired of performing," she admitted. "I did that for years, pretended to be fine when I wasn't, pretended to want things I didn't." "Good," Julian said. "Because the real you is far more interesting." When he left that night, he didn't try to kiss her. He just held her gaze for a long moment, then said, "Thank you for sharing that with me." But something had shifted. They both felt it. The invitation a week later, Julian texted her late in the evening. "I'm cooking dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just something I want to share. Interested?" Sienna stared at the message. This wasn't just another evening at the bar. This was him inviting her into his space, his life. She could feel the weight of what this meant. She typed back, "What time?" 7. "I'll send the address." She didn't sleep much that night. Not from anxiety, but from anticipation. Something was building between them, slow and sure, and tomorrow it would either deepen or pull back. Either way, she knew she had to show up honestly. The next evening, standing outside his door with a bottle of wine in her hands, Sienna took a breath. She knocked. When Julian opened the door, he was barefoot, wearing a soft gray t-shirt and jeans, his smile warm and unhurried. "Come in," he said. "I'm glad you're here." And as she stepped inside, the scent of garlic and rosemary filling the air, Sienna realized she was glad too. For the first time in years, she was ready to let someone in. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. And that made all the difference. Julian's home wasn't what Sienna expected. She'd imagined something modern and minimal, all glass and sharp edges. Instead, it was warm. Hardwood floors, deep couches, bookshelves filled with worn paperbacks and travel guides. A fireplace with actual logs burning. The kitchen was open, bright, with herbs growing in small pots on the windowsill. "This is beautiful," she said, setting the wine on the counter. "Thanks. I designed it myself." He stirred something on the stove, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up. "I wanted it to feel like a place I actually wanted to come home to, not just a place to sleep." Sienna walked closer, watching him work. He moved with the same deliberate grace he brought to everything. "What are you making?" "Risotto. Mushroom and truffle oil. And I've got salmon in the oven." He glanced at her. "I hope you're hungry, starving." They cooked together not in a forced way, but naturally. He handed her a wooden spoon to stir while he prepped the salad. She poured them both wine, the Barolo she'd brought. They moved around each other easily, no awkwardness. Just rhythm. "You're good at this," she said. "Tasting the risotto, I like feeding people I care about," said it simply. But the weight of those words hung in the air between them. They ate at his dining table. Candles lit, the fire crackling in the background. The food was perfect, but what Sienna would remember most was the conversation. They talked for hours, the kind of talking where you lose track of time. Julian told her about building his company from nothing, the failures that almost broke him. The moment he realized he was creating something that mattered. Sienna told him about opening the wine bar, how terrified she'd been, how it saved her when she didn't know she needed saving. I almost didn't do it, she admitted. After everything fell apart, I thought about leaving town, starting over somewhere no one knew me. What stopped you? I realized running doesn't fix anything. It just moves the problem. She swirled her wine. I needed to build something that felt like mine, something nobody could take away. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. Not dramatically, just gently. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I'm glad you stayed, Sienna's breath caught. The touch was simple, but it sent warmth spreading through her entire body. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand over. Lacing her fingers through his, the moment that changed everything after dinner, they moved to the couch. The fire had burned down to embers, casting soft shadows across the room. Julian poured them each a small glass of whiskey, something smooth and aged. They sat close. Not touching yet, but the space between them felt electric. Can I tell you something? Julian said, his voice quieter now. Always. I wasn't looking for this, for you. I'd convinced myself I was fine alone, that building the company was enough. He turned to face her fully. And then you walked into my life, or I walked into yours, and everything shifted. You make me want to be present, not just productive. Sienna felt her heart pound. I feel the same way. I'd built these walls, told myself I didn't need anyone. But you, she trailed off, searching for the right words. You make me want to let someone in again. Julian set his glass down. His hand came up to her face, fingers brushing her cheek, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Can I kiss you? The question, the asking, the respect in it, made Sienna's answer easy. Yes. When their lips met, it wasn't tentative or uncertain. It was like something that had been building for months, finally breaking through. His hand cupped her face, her fingers tangled in his hair, and the kiss deepened, slow and consuming. There was heat, yes, but also tenderness, like they were both trying to say everything they hadn't been able to put into words. When they pulled back, breathing heavier, Julian rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered. Not a demand, an invitation. Sienna's answer came without hesitation. Okay. The night they both remembered, he led her upstairs, their hands linked. His bedroom was simple, a large bed with white linens, windows overlooking the bay, moonlight streaming in. He turned to face her, his hands on her waist, his eyes searching hers. Are you sure? He asked. I've never been more sure of anything, she said, and she meant it. What happened next wasn't rushed or frantic. It was deliberate, attentive, the same way Julian approached everything. He undressed her slowly, his hands reverent, his lips following every inch of skin he revealed. Sienna felt seen, not just physically, but emotionally. Like he was taking his time to know every part of her. When they finally came together, it felt like everything else fell away. The past, the fear, the walls they'd both built. There was only this moment, this connection, this feeling of being completely present with another person. He moved with her, not over her. Listening to every sound she made, adjusting, responding, making sure she felt everything. You're incredible, he murmured against her neck. And the way he said it, breathless and honest, made her believe it. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. The room was quiet, except for their breathing and the distant sound of waves. I don't want this to be just tonight, Julian said into the darkness. Sienna lifted her head to look at him. Neither do I, then let's not make it just tonight. He kissed her forehead. Let's make it the start of something real. Feeling something bloom in her chest that she'd thought was dead. Hope. Okay, they fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in years, Sienna didn't wake up in the middle of the night feeling alone. The morning, after Sienna woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee, she stretched, realizing she was wearing one of Julian's t-shirts, soft and oversized. She padded downstairs to find him in the kitchen, barefoot in sweatpants, making breakfast. Morning, he said, his smile easy and warm. How do you take your eggs? however you're making them. She walked over, wrapping her arms around him from behind. He leaned back into her, and it felt natural. It's like they'd been doing this for years. They ate on the balcony overlooking the water. The morning was cool, the sky clear. Everything felt new and full of possibility. "What happens now?" Sienna asked, sipping her coffee. Julian reached for her hand. "We take it one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just us, figuring it out together. I like that." "Good." He squeezed her hand. "Because I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, sitting beside him with the sun on her face and his hand in hers, Sienna believed him. She believed in this. In them, what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that in a few weeks, everything would shift again. Not in a way that would break them, but in a way that would test everything they'd just promised each other. Because life had a way of throwing curveballs just when you thought you'd figured things out. But that morning, with the ocean stretching endlessly before them and possibility humming in the air, they were just two people who'd found something real. And that was enough. 3 weeks later, Sienna stood in her bathroom staring at a plastic stick that had just changed her entire life. 2 pink lines. Clear, undeniable, impossible to misread. Pregnant, her hands shook as she set the test on the counter. She'd taken 3 more just to be sure. All positive. Her period was 2 weeks late, and she'd chalked it up to stress, to the intensity of starting a new relationship. But this morning, the nausea had been too strong to ignore. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, trying to process. She and Julian had been careful, mostly. But there was that one night wrapped up in each other, too lost in the moment to think clearly. One night, and now this. Sienna wasn't scared exactly. She was 29, financially stable, emotionally ready for a lot of things. But a baby? With someone she'd only been seeing for a few months. That hadn't been part of the plan. Except, she realized, looking at the test again, maybe plans didn't matter as much as she thought they did. Maybe life happened the way it needed to, not the way you scheduled it. She picked up her phone. Her finger hovered over Julian's name. They'd grown so close over the past weeks, spending almost every evening together. He'd met her friends. She'd met his business partner. They were building something real, something that felt solid. But this would test everything. She pressed call. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, beautiful. I was just thinking about you. Can you come over?" Her voice was steadier than she expected. "I need to talk to you about something." There was a pause. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know yet, but I need you here. I'm leaving now." The conversation that mattered Julian arrived 20 minutes later, still in his work clothes, concern etched on his face. Sienna opened the door and he immediately pulled her into a hug. "What's wrong?" he asked, stepping back to look at her. Sienna led him to the couch. They sat facing each other, her hands in his. She took a breath, then said it plainly. "I'm pregnant." Julian went completely still. His eyes widened, searching her face like he was trying to make sure he'd heard correctly. "Pregnant," he repeated. "Yes, you're sure?" She nodded. "For tests. All positive." Julian exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. For a long moment, he didn't say anything, and Sienna felt her heart start to race. This was it. This was where he'd either step up or step back, where she'd find out if everything they'd built was real or just a beautiful fantasy. Then he looked at her. His eyes were wet. "We're having a baby?" The way he said "we like it" was already a given that they were in this together, made Sienna's throat tighten. "Yes, we are." Julian pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. When he pulled back, he was smiling. Actually smiling. "I know this wasn't planned. I know it's fast, and maybe we're not ready, but..." He cupped her face. "I want this. I want you. I want us." Sienna felt tears spill over. "You're not scared?" "Terrified," he admitted. "But not of this. Not of you. I'm scared of messing it up, of not being good enough. But I'm not scared of trying." He kissed her forehead. "We've built something real, Sienna. This just means we're building it bigger, faster than we expected. But it's still us. It's still real. You really mean that? I've never meant anything more. Sienna let herself cry then, relief and joy and fear all mixing together. Julian held her through it, his hand rubbing circles on her back. His presence steady and sure, building the future over the next few days. They talked about everything. Logistics, fears, hopes, what their lives would look like. Julian insisted she'd move in with him, not because he thought she couldn't handle it alone, but because he wanted to be there for every moment. Sienna agreed, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to build this life with him. They told their families. Sienna's mother cried, happy tears this time, and said it was the best news she'd heard in years. Julian's parents flew in from Seattle, and his mother hugged Sienna like she was already family. He's been waiting for you, she whispered in Sienna's ear. I can see it in the way he looks at you. The wine bar stayed open, but Sienna hired an assistant manager, someone she trusted to help carry the load. Julian adjusted his work schedule, making sure he was home for dinner every night, making sure Sienna never felt alone in this. One evening, about 2 months into the pregnancy, they sat on his balcony watching the sunset. Sienna's hand rested on her barely there bump, Julian's hand covering hers. I've been thinking, he said, about us. This. The future. He turned to face her. I don't want to rush you, and I know we're already moving fast, but I need you to know something. What? I love you, Sienna. I've loved you since that first day you recommended that Pinot Noir and told me wine deserves respect. I've loved you through every conversation, every quiet moment, every time you let me see who you really are. He squeezed her hand. And I want to marry you. Not because you're pregnant, not because it's what we're supposed to do, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Sienna felt her heart expand. Julian, ... You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. I'm in this, completely. Sienna smiled through tears. I love you too. I have for a while now. I was just scared to say it, scared it was too soon. It's not too soon if it's real. And yes, she said. Whenever you're ready to ask properly, the answer is yes. Julian laughed, pulling her into his arms. I'll make it good. I promise. I don't need good, Sienna whispered. I just need you. 6 months later, Sienna stood in the nursery, her hand on her very round belly. Looking at the walls Julian had painted soft gray, the crib was assembled, the changing table stocked, tiny clothes folded in drawers. Everything was ready. Julian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her, his hands resting on her stomach. You okay? More than okay, she said. I'm happy. Me too. The baby kicked, and they both laughed. In a few weeks, their daughter would be here. Evelyn Rose, they'd decided. Named after both their grandmothers. Remember when you walked into my bar that first day? Sienna said. How could I forget? You changed my life. No, she said, turning in his arms. We changed each other's lives. That's what makes this work. Julian kissed her, soft and sweet. I can't wait to meet her. I can't wait to see you as a mom. I can't wait for all of it. Even the sleepless nights and dirty diapers. Especially those. Because we'll be doing it together and standing there in the home they'd built. With their daughter about to arrive and a future full of possibilities stretching before them, Sienna realized something important. Life didn't always go according to plan. Sometimes it threw you curveballs. Sometimes it gave you something you didn't know you needed. But if you were brave enough to say yes, to stay open, to let someone in, those unexpected moments could become the best parts of your story. One night had changed everything, but it wasn't just the night. It was every choice they'd made after. To show up, to be honest, to build something real.